What do you think a healthy relationship looks like?
I think for me and my partner, it would just be about them knowing as much about me as possible and as much about what I'm thinking and how I'm feeling as possible, and just being open and honest with those. And I think when you've been with someone a long time, or you get to know someone, I think even in this change room now where we've been with each other a long time, we can be open and honest about those things, because it's going to benefit yourself but also the other person or the group. And that would be my answer, just being as open and as honest as possible, and so that the other person can know as much about you and what's going on in your life as possible.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. I've been married like a year and a half now, just had my first kid. My wife and been together for like 6 years, so the reason the relationship for me is so good is exactly what you said. We're open with each other, we're honest with each other, and we have each other's backs with everything. I think having that dialogue every single day, being with someone that makes you happy, it becomes easy in life. And I think it's important that you translate that not just in your relationship to your partner, but also, like Joe said, between each other in the dressing room. I probably spend just as much time with my wife as I do with boys in the football changing room. And that's the reality of it, because the amount of time I'm in work, and I'm sure it's the same for most people working in any industry. So creating those relationships is very important, and being able to trust, being able to open yourself up, so to trust other people to help you out is a huge thing.
Yeah, I think when you look at a partnership, I think it is like a team effort. Obviously with kind of my situation over the past couple of years, it's deemed to be obviously what I'm going through and kind of the difficulties that I had, but me living through it, I didn't find it that mentally challenging. Obviously it was physically quite demanding, but obviously Flora to kind of see me on a day-to-day kind of in that situation, but then doesn't really want to burden me with it. It kind of took a toll on her, so I think it kind of just shows you that even something that might not affect you will or can affect others, and that communication to try and get her the help that she needed through the process as well.
I think it's very easy when you talk about role models to pick people you think who are similar to you, right? Yeah. And I think that's why we've probably all gone down the route of looking at footballers or our dads in that sense. But if I look at my life now, probably the biggest role model I have in my life is my wife. We spend pretty much every spare bit of time I have together, and I think she makes me a better person, and I get to speak about any issues that I have going on. But even talking about stuff like that, just getting off my chest, it goes a long way. And I'm very grateful to have her in my life.
Yeah, I think self-reflection is really important. I think sometimes it can be really difficult. I think it's easy for us to look at other people and criticise other people, but sometimes to look at yourself and be self-critical is more important. I think it's obviously important to try and be self-critical and trying to reflect on how you're coming across and how you're living your life. But yeah, for sure it can be difficult, and for sure something I'm probably not amazing at.
It's probably the hardest thing to do, exactly. Is to be self-reflective and know exactly what you are. But I think it comes down to just you have to open yourself up and communicate again. Find people who will tell you the truth. If you're behaving poorly, then they will let you know. And I think, as Joe says, it's hard to look in the mirror sometimes and see that, but you need to be open enough that you'd allow people into your life that could tell you that.
Obviously trying to leave the important stuff you do need to talk about, but maybe trying not to take work stuff home and little things like that. I think obviously you can have a discussion about work, but if you've had a really bad day, one for me, obviously if I'm not playing or I'm training not very well, and kind of you're in that bit of a rut at football, not to kind of take it home and take it out on someone around you. I think obviously there's a conversation to be had, and probably voice your opinion on what you think might be the cause or the solution, but not to take it out on people that aren't really involved in it.
I think it's probably very easy to the people who are closest to you to vent to as well.
Yeah, I think just in some cases when you get home and you're just probably a little bit fuming, or you're a little bit down and things like that, and they're obviously on the front line of your emotions, and yeah, it's obviously just trying to self-reflect and try and not take it out on people that don't deserve it.
So how important do you think it is to have conversation with your friends about their behaviours?
I think if you see a behaviour that you don't think is correct or right or is inappropriate, I think it's quite pivotal really that you kind of pull them up on it. I think if my friends were acting a certain way out in public or in their relationships or whatever it may be, I think if I don't want to be associated with that type of thing, I'd definitely pull them up on it. And yeah, I think you're only as good as the company you keep, and I think yeah, you obviously want people around you, how you want to behave and how you want to be seen to the world, and I think yeah, it's very important.
Obviously the people around you are a reflection of you, and I think it comes down, I think that is being a good friend at the end of the day. I think, you know, a good friend comes under many different umbrellas, but I think, you know, calling them out when needed to be is certainly a part of that. Maybe not the easiest thing to do, which is maybe why some people don't do it. Of course, people don't like to have conflict or even little things like that with their friends and people close to them, but I think it comes down to being a good friend at the end of the day. I think deep down the people who were being called out would thank you for it, and I think, like we said at the start, I think if we were behaving in a certain way, you'd want someone to let you know about it, and I think that just comes down to having open and honest people around you.
I think maybe in the then and now it's sometimes difficult for people to see their own behaviours, but like you said, in the long run, I think you'd be thanked for it.
Why do you boys think men have struggled in the past to open up about those topics?
It's a tough one. Look, I'm probably still guilty of it now. I keep a lot of stuff to myself. I'd feel like I don't want to burden other people with my issues, and I'll deal with it in my own way. It's maybe like a masculinity thing. I think men want to keep it themselves. They want to be the strong one. They don't show too much emotion. We're in an industry as well where historically it's been, if you open up about having too many problems, you can be perceived as weak. And we've always had a thing in football where, you know, the mentally strong ones are the ones you'd trust to put on the team on a Saturday. But I think that, like we've touched on, is changing. I think it's for the better.
I think that would kind of go into any workspace as well. I think most people's friends will be the ones in the office and kind of workspace. I think if you look at that type of environment and you don't really want to be seen as weak or not capable of doing something because you have more emotions than the next man, I think it can cause a few problems.
Yeah, I think in terms of the pressure, I think it should only be the pressure that you've put on yourself. I don't think that should be internal. I don't think you should feel you have to do something because of outside expectations. You know, I think that's a societal thing. I think, you know, talk about men providing for family, that seems an old-fashioned thing, and I think subconsciously that has always been the case and maybe been drummed into us a little bit. And like I said, I think if there's any pressure on yourself, it should come from you and what you want to do. And if you want to have that pressure on yourself to do that and not anything external, social media, etc., because I don't think that's beneficial for anybody. What do you think we could do as men to make women feel safe?
I'd say just from obviously my own experiences, just kind of being there. Whenever Flora's needed me, if she needs me to pick her up, if she needs just to chat, I think it's just kind of being available at all times really. I think when I look at, say, just my specific scenario, we're both 4 odd hours away from home, so it's not like she had a lot of people to kind of turn to, especially when we first moved down there. So kind of just, yeah, like I say, just being there constantly, and if she ever needed me for anything, just kind of making sure that that she knows that I'll be there.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I think that's definitely the way you need to be treating the people close in your life. But I recently did something with my club as well, back in London at Spurs, and it was basically highlighting how scary it can be for women when they're just walking home from work, or they did it with the club because it was scary for women walking alone after games at night. And so it was very much trying to highlight the help that you can do, the help that you can give to these women, or even actions you can do just to make them feel more comfortable, because we probably don't realise it so much, but if you're walking home at night alone and you're hearing on the news stories of women being abducted or killed is pretty awful, and it's a pretty terrifying thing. And I've got a younger sister who lives in London, and I can't imagine her getting off the tube and worrying that just to make a 10-minute walk home, and it's a terrifying ordeal. So I think it was little things, just make yourself approachable, not be too boisterous if you're in a group, think about how your words, your actions would make a woman feel, because you've all seen groups of young men who might see a woman on the street and shout silly things, or call them out, make an example of them. And I think, yeah, it might be funny with a group of boys at the time, but in reality it's probably not the most comfortable thing the woman's going through at that time. So I think that any actions that you can do, and even if it's crossing the street away from the woman to make her feel more comfortable when crossing, little things like that, especially at night time, can have such a huge impact. Because I have to be honest, I only really understand coercive control properly. Gaslighting I've heard a lot of, but I haven't really been too aware of it. And love bombing, I'll be honest, I hadn't heard of it. No. But I think these are the type of things that we have these conversations for. When
you look at, say, them terms and kind of go into it, like Ben, I didn't really know what any of them meant. You kind of hear them being talked about on certain instances with abuse and things, but when you actually understand what some of them mean, I think many people will probably be guilty of some of them without even knowing. Like, even if it's not on the extreme level, it's kind of just making yourself aware that obviously other people's feelings are involved, and kind of making sure that you're kind of being the best partner as possible, especially in a romantic relationship and things, and just kind of being understanding of what these terms are and what they can cause. So just obviously making yourself aware of these and making sure that you can do better in the future is probably important.
Yeah, I think they're obviously things that sound so small and maybe insignificant, but I think once you understand them, can obviously have such a detrimental effect on people. And I think it just comes back to, empathy and trying to put yourself in another person's shoes and understanding how they might feel. And then also, educating ourselves on what they do mean, and making sure that first, we're not guilty of any of them, because I think, like we touched on before, I think when you sort yourself out and make sure that you're as good as you can be in these kind of areas, then you can start influencing other people. And I think, but obviously, like you said, if you don't know what they mean, then it's difficult to make sure that you're not doing them.
Yeah, and I think, like you're getting at, it's understanding them, understanding what they mean, and if they are something small to start with, understanding them and realising that they, in the long term, can actually have a really detrimental effect on.
Yeah, if it just carries on escalating.
If it carries on, if they're precursors to what could end up as domestic violence, you need to put a stop to it if you see it, and I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure.
What do you think the world looks like without gender-based violence in our lives?
I think obviously a better place. I think it's not something that I've never experienced or never had anybody around me experience, but it's obviously a big problem. But I think it's just about, first looking at yourself, but then also making sure that we educate ourselves better. We have these difficult conversations that I think people sometimes are scared to have. Because it's going to make a better world for all of us, and I think that's all we all want. I think we're all going to have kids. Some of us have got kids. Growing up in this world, in this society, and I think I'd do anything for my unborn kids to have a better society to grow up in. And I think if we can do little things in order to make these bigger changes, it's obviously a no-brainer on a personal level.
I think it's kind of understanding the reality of it, and kind of just associating, especially myself, with good behaviours, and kind of, like we touched on earlier, being around people that are trying to do the same things. I think once you understand it and you can start implementing it in your life and people around you, I think it will obviously rub off on people. And like I say, if you keep in good company and those people are doing exactly the same, it's only going to spread and help everyone, really.
Yeah, I think the boys hit the nail on the head. I think that fact that any woman would be afraid to just be in their own home with their partners or their husband is crazy. And look, in my life, I'm very grateful and lucky that I've never experienced anything or even seen anything like that. But when you understand that this is a pretty common thing, that we are in a position where even by talking about it today, we can influence some people's decisions or make people think twice, I think it's a better world for everybody.
Yeah.
Chwilio am Iawn Cymru ar Instagram, TikTok neu YouTube am wybodaeth, cefnogaeth a chyngor ar berthnasoedd iach. Iawn I siarad, cymorth iawn, popeth yn iawn.